Next would be the Women's Advisory, and Esther is going to be the spokesperson for them.
When we had our women's group yesterday, there was about 22 of us in the room. And last year when they had the women's group, they mentioned that there needs to be a follow-up on the meeting that they had. We can't just leave it there. And obviously there was not enough time. I think Paula was the one that mentioned that we need more time, right? So it would be awesome if we could get that women's group again and the other groups again, separately, not in the same room. Because in 12 years, I've not seen this much participation by leadership and by our communities. So this is awesome. Give yourself a round of applause. And I also want to say that the special ed presentation that was done up here and in trying to address the violence is actually a real solution for our communities. There is so much violence in our communities. A long time ago when I was a child, people used to say, they used to call me a semi pot. Because I'm part Stony. I'm not ashamed of it. But they used to call me that in school, eh? And not realizing that could be mean. And what were some of the other things you guys did? I know some of you made a face at the student behind you, or sitting across the room, and stuck your tongue out at them, I bet. Now what do the kids do today? They stick their finger up. And people think that's nothing, but it is something. It's violence. And that's why I was so impressed with the presentation by the special ed, because it's trying to address the real core of the problem, the violence in our community. And it's there, we can't deny it. No community is perfect. But what I wanted to say to the Grand Chief, and this was brought up by the women in the group. This is the first time in a long while that the women were acknowledged first in the introduction to this conference. The first time that it's happened, and it shows a change in how women are perceived by the men. And it's a good thing. It's awesome. That's what I wanted to acknowledge him on, because, there he is. See? Awesome.
You better run, Steve, you're calling.
I'd like to give our Grand Chief a great big round of applause for acknowledging us as women in his introduction when we started the conference. And I know he's a real advocate for the missing and murdered women, so, there's change. It's slow, but there's change coming. What is our vision for education? That's a question for everyone. What is your vision for education? If we were designing our education system, how would we create the curriculum? What would be included? We are constantly learning. Education is human development. Many times, and I know Rod, who's the acting chief for Breakout right now, when we were negotiating with industry, we always told industry, we never had a good economic base in our communities. We didn't have income from oil and gas or any of those things. But what we had was our people. That was our resource. And so working towards the betterment of the people was one of the goals that we had. And it's a good thing, because like I said, if you're going to address that violence, the people that have to be in the forefront, they have to be healthy. They can't be saying one thing at the table and doing something else behind the door, and acting differently when they're not in sight. We are, and no matter how you look at it, no matter who you are, if you're in leadership, you are a role model. You're a role model. And so how you project that and what you do, it counts. The young man that came up here to speak, what was his name again? Seth? Yeah. And he's from your community, Richard?
Yes.
You know, when I sat over there and I watched his confidence, that's what it takes for our young people to overcome that racism that they have in the schools. Because it doesn't hold them back. It makes them stronger. And I see him as a Rhodes Scholar. I see him as possible Prime Minister of this country. That's what I know our youth have, that ability to be the best they can be and give the best that they can. We need an education system that brings out each person's innate qualities. If I was going to school and if they were focused on my artistic abilities, I would have been a famous artist by now. I'm just saying. I don't even know how to draw, but just using that as an example. But there are so many talents that our children have and nobody pursues them. Music, they're so musical, our people. I bet you half the people in this room can pick up a guitar and sing. I bet you. Not me, but I bet you guys would. You know what I mean? We have lots of talent, but nobody pursues it. And that's education too. Change, someone said this, not me. Change is always driven by women. I think it was Esther that said that. No. But Dr. Leroy Little Bear spoke to you yesterday, and he had said in a meeting with the chiefs in Calgary, he said, real change, changing the conversation brings on, something like that anyway. I can't remember the direct quote, I have it somewhere. But he was a very brilliant man, Dr. Leroy Little Bear. I really thank him for what he had to offer yesterday. It was just awesome. We need to understand what things affect us as learners. We need to understand the impact of drugs and alcohol, and why is suicide so prominent in our communities? You know, when you think about it, because a person can be healthy and still think of suicide. Why? We need to address that somehow. I don't know how we're going to do that, because all the money in the world is not going to change that person and how they feel. So we have to help them in a different way. We can't just always compensate, because we're not fixing the problem when we compensate. It's something that I've been thinking about, and I really would like some research done in that area, and to see what we can do to really help the young people that are committing. But the sad thing is, it's not only young people that are committing suicide, it's middle-aged people and older people. We can't give up. I'm going to let Esther go into some of the other parts of her presentation, but this is amazing. This is amazing. In the 12 years that I was portfolio chief, to have people come together and really want to contribute. Nobody's going to take over any education that you have in your community. That is not the intent of Treaty 8. I know Treaty 8 gets blamed for a lot of things, but that's not our intention at all. But like I said, Richard and the Grand Chief have a meeting with the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs I'm just saying that. I know you'll have one in the future. That they can go there and say, look, Treaty 8 is ready to take on a project. Let us see if we could begin the process of decolonization for our people and really bring forth some of the things we can teach through our elders. And she'll go into some of those points now so that you know what we're talking about. You know, somebody talked about volunteers. And some volunteers work really hard. But when you have volunteers that have skills, they should be compensated. No one would come and work for nothing. I guarantee that. But they get paid anyway for everything they do. But when it's our own people with the knowledge and accreditation, they get nothing. And that needs to change. And that's not up to anybody, that's up to us. Acknowledge our own people and the skills that they have. Cree language instructors, there's no need to have that diploma. We can find a process to accredit those people so they can teach in our schools. That's, you know, there's all kinds of things we could be doing to make that difference, but we're just not going there. We're scared to step on Isaac's foot because he might get mad. I'm just using you for an example, because you're young and I know you could take it. So, you know, those kind of things, but we need to move. We need to move forward. And I try to say that we need to do this again and really get down to the nitty-gritty of it. And what was the other word? Oh, that lady. Where was that lady that did that presentation for special ed? She used the word tickety-boo. I said, she's got to be old. She used the word tickety-boo. I really, but anyways, that just shows how old we are. Okay, it's your turn. And then I'll come back to the other points. Is that working?
Tanse, Esther Jurinsika Sunwapsusi Pio Chinia. I've been honored today to let you know what the women that are in our group are considering, what they want actually in creating a First Nations education system. First of all, we broke it into the category of schools. The schools in all our nations must include language and culture. That's first and foremost for us women. We are thinking a lot of our young people have lost their language to residential school and the impacts of residential school on our, like myself. For example, I've had to go back and learn to speak my language, and I still don't have the confidence that I should have because I know and I understand the language, but I'm afraid to speak my language because we were punished in the residential school for speaking our language. So that impacted me. So that's an impact on me, and now I'm trying to gain that confidence because I am a Cree language and culture teacher in the school, and with the young people, I can speak my language and it just flows freely. But when I'm around adults, I find myself not being able to think when it comes to the language. So I know that the young people in my classroom who are kindergarten students to grade 3 students are like sponges, and they're learning the language and they love it. And I teach it through song, through dance, through experiential learning, and a lot of different ways that our people taught, rather than them sitting at a desk and learning. I actually call them my little warriors, and they love it. They're so proud to sit there as a Nihia warrior in our Cree classes. The language our women are saying must start in the home when the child is born. The first teachers of that child are the women. because they bear that child, they give birth to that child, and they raise that child, and that child could learn the language. If we teach our parents to speak the language, they can pass that language down to their children from the time they're born. They can also continue to learn it in the daycare centers, also when they're then going on to their school and within the school system to keep passing it down. We all must learn, they're saying. Not only the women are saying that it has to happen, that all the staff that are in the school systems, in our schools, have to learn the language as well as the parents. And involve our parents in all that we do. Bring them in for what gifts they have. What gifts do the parents have? For example, I just brought in a young parent into my classroom who I knew was good at making dream catchers. And so that parent came in and taught the students. And her children were so proud that their mom was in that classroom. And the little ones know the parents because they go play there. So they knew who she was, and it's wonderful to have the parents in the classroom using their gifts. And again, it was on a volunteer basis. We did not pay her, but you know what? She should have got something for being in that classroom. And they're saying that for our young people, once they're done high school, to continue their education, they have to leave the reserve to go and gain a career of choice. And they say we must address this with our partners. We have to maintain our connections with Alberta Education, the universities, and all of the other connections that we have, like for Treaty 8 as well, the different universities that we have here. We have to maintain connections in that way, and maybe like we have the HF program in our area, the Aboriginal Teachers Program, which are within our communities right now, and then the University of Calgary was here talking about their program as well, so we could look at the different universities here in Alberta. So that was one minute. Align our native languages and the Head Start programs. They're saying also we have to blend, and I've heard this from just about every presenter that came up, we have to blend the Western education along with our First Nations education. And our children must know the best of two worlds, not just the Western education world. Allow youth, women, and adults to take Cree that are not in the school. For example, we think that the parents, if they can't speak the language, should also be involved in taking Cree with their children in the schools. And we need supports for that. So we're going to need babysitting and funding for the parents to be able to do that with their children. Or maybe we'll have all the children in the classroom. I don't know how we do it, but if we want to teach the language and the culture, we're going to have to involve all the family, is what they're saying. The whole family needs to be involved. And if we're going to be teaching anything like the impacts of residential school, the intergenerational impacts of that, we need to have the parents and the youth and all of the family involved in learning as to what happened. Why did we have a loss of language? Why did we have loss of parenting skills? Why did we drink and do alcohol and drugs and all those impacts because we felt lost and we didn't know who we were? A loss of identity, a loss of self-esteem, all those things. They're saying there should be more weight put on First Nation curriculum. And for example, they use the Cree 10, 20, and 30 courses, and as well as Aboriginal Studies 10, 20, and 30. And then don't forget the Treaty 8 grades 1, 2, and 3 social studies. There's a lot of information in there that could be utilized by the teachers in our schools. Moving on to empowering women. And they're saying women take care of the children. They make our children and we can raise our children. They have to raise their children from birth, so they're the first teachers, the first role models that the children see in the home, along with the father. But the mother is the one that's most of the time at home with their children. And as parents, we are the representatives of our children. So when we come into the school has to remember that we are the parents of these children and we represent our children when we come there. However we behave, however we role model as parents, influences how your child will be in life. We have to teach our children not to be hopeless to a point of committing suicide. We have to bring our kids up so that they're proud of who they are and where they come from. They're proud of their ancestors and their history and what they've done. They're proud of their leadership and their governance and all those types of things, so the child doesn't feel hopeless. They're talking about how we're asking for psychologists to come into school who do assessments, but they assess the child and they leave. Why can't we use our elders to help with a child that's having difficulty of some kind, and maybe that elder could take him out in the bush, teach him how to hunt, how to trap, and at the same time talk to the child. Families must be strong, and we must be strong to help our children. A long time ago, one lady was expressing in there that children used to go out in the community, and everybody looked after that child and disciplined that child while they were out in the community. And now, if we even say anything to a child, the family comes back at you. But it actually takes a whole community to raise that child. And the child, well, I know when I was young, that's how it was. We used to get told to go home by an adult or something, it was time to go home. We never talked back to them, we just went home. And we listened to them, we respected them. So we didn't argue with them, we didn't talk back. And this is the way it should be again. We must communicate with one another because we're all connected. So in communities, we're all connected. So we need to talk to each other. We need to communicate with one another. We believe that we should look at and address the things that impact education, such as drugs and alcohol, addictions, bullying, and suicide. And that's been said already. Culture. When we're talking about culture, we were never meant to be in a box. We are meant to be in a circle where everybody's equal to one another and to respect everybody for the gifts that they have. We are holistic people and we're holistic thinkers. It's empowering to see our children take part in cultural activities. For example, powwows or even just going into the bush and ice fishing or doing something like that, putting up a teepee, learning how to do all those types of things. And also it's very important that in the school systems we have to talk to the students about the impact of residential school. I think it's important that our children learn that and they come to understand why their parents are doing what they're doing, and once they understand, then they can forgive. Parents must learn the culture, the language. They learn to hunt, fish, beating, our values, our morals, and teach our children these things. Elders are waiting for the parents and children to come and to ask for their help and their knowledge. A lot of elders are sitting at home and are feeling like they're useless. They have nothing to give anymore. Their talents aren't being used, their knowledge, their skills, their wisdom. They're saying that we need to start going out and asking the elders to help us, to give us some information on the history of our peoples and things like that. Utilize your elders in your communities. Funds, money, and pay. First First Nations knowledge is valued less than Indigenous knowledge. We need to start understanding and realizing that our Indigenous knowledge is just as important as the non-Indigenous knowledge is. For example, they're saying in some of the schools, the non-Indigenous teachers are looked up to, while your old people that have a degree with a lot of knowledge are not looked up at the same level. So we got to be, everybody has to be equal, non-Indigenous, Indigenous, whatever, but we're all equal in God's eyes. Prayer. We need to feel the spirit of prayer. And I was one that shared this in the group because I was talking to my brother about language, and he said, I've been asked as an elder to pray in my community so many times. He said, it hurts me to stand there and realize that half the people that are in the group listening to the prayer don't understand what I'm saying. So that because they can't understand what I'm saying, they don't feel the spirit of that prayer in their being. So they're just standing there. They're not getting that feeling of that prayer. And I shared with them, I was born, like I said, I was raised in residential school from the time I was 3 years old till I was 12. And so I was impacted a lot by the Catholic Church and their values and their beliefs. I went to the Nietzsche Institute for the first time to help myself to heal from the impacts of residential school. And as we stood in that circle that day and held hands, the late Rose Auger from Driftpaw said the prayer. And that was the first time that I ever heard a prayer in Cree where somebody's prayed really hard for all of our children, and that our children were a gift from the Creator. And as a gift from the Creator, we're responsible for raising our children properly on this earth, and to give thanks each and every day that the Creator allowed us to have these children that were His children to raise. I cried. I felt it in the spirit of my being. And that's what He meant. If we don't teach our children that language, they're not going to feel that spirit within them. Prayers are more powerful when they're spoken in Cree or any native language, Dene, Chip, or whatever language group you come from. If you hear your prayer in your language, you can feel that prayer. Children don't feel that power because they don't speak their language. That's important for us to make them feel, help them to feel that power. And also, it's a way to heal our families. So we have to not give up and continue to pray each and every day for our families. We're all connected on our reserves. We're interconnected, every one of us. If we look back, we're related. That's why we say all our relations. Child welfare needs to stop intervening. Parents must look after their own families. They are making things worse. They should not just focus on children, but on the families. For example, they're saying, so they take the children away but leave the parents, and then the parents are having the issues, but they're not involved in any healing for the parents. They think that the women are saying, bring the whole family together with that child to heal together. Although they're very glad that they do provide the services when the children need to be safe in their communities, they think the children should stay in the communities, not be taken away from their communities. And the last piece that the women were addressing were elders. How can we formally recognize them when they come to the schools? We can ask our elders to come to the schools. Then we give up just an honoraria, but they're saying if you got a teacher with a degree to come into the school, you would have to pay them a substitute's wage. But when an elder comes into the school, you're not paying them that wage. when they're coming in to share their knowledge and their wisdom with the students in the school. So they're saying they need to be recognized as teachers because they are teachers. There are teachers as First Nations people. So we need to recognize them as such and pay them decent wages when they come in. We need to show that we value them and their knowledge. By doing that, we do that. That was it for my portion of the presentation. I thank you all for listening, and I'd like to thank all the women that were in our group, the 22 women who shared this information that I just shared with you. Thank you.
I also would like to thank the women that were in our group. I was impressed. I was humbled by their presence and your contribution to the conversation. And I'm hoping that we can do it again in the very near future so that they could be part of making that change and creating a system that would be good for our children. The ceremony that Esther talked about, the 4-fire ceremony and the initiation of a young lady becoming a woman, we brought that ceremony to my community, and there was women from my community that took part in it. There was only about 2, maybe 3 younger people. Most of them were older because we've never experienced that ever. And when you walk in the ceremony, you walk in and you're welcomed by the older women of the community, and they embrace you. It was the most powerful moment in my life when that happened. So can you imagine if we had that turned into a program for our young children in the school, how good they would feel about themselves and respecting their body. And they wouldn't go and, because we had good ways. We were actually really smart. I don't know what happened. We took care of our own. That's the thing that's sad. We took care of our own. And the elders knew who was going to be the leader in the community. The elders knew who was the hunter, not these drive-by shootings that happened. You know, real hunter that walked in the bush and tracks a moose and gets it. That kind of hunter I'm talking about. I think that's how Arthur was caught, I think, he said. But he's still confused about the mule deer. So, you look at the intelligence that we had, and we still have it, but somehow, some way, we've lost that ability to embrace our own way of life. And we need to go back there because our communities are hurting. They're in pain. We have suicide. We have everything that's wrong in the books we have in our communities. And we have to change it. Us, everybody together. We have to work together. The display of the injustice that young man showed yesterday, that's no reflection of our Grand Chief. Because what he does for Treaty 8 is over and above what he has to do as chief of his nation. And he should be commended for that, not criticized. How many of you know that you're our Treaty 8 human being? That you're part of Treaty 8? That's you. All of you. We are the treaty people. And if we don't believe that, and it's less and less, we are going to be our own demise of the loss of our treaty. We have to keep moving it and believing that we are the treaty people. And my friend who's sitting here, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, who's helping us today to put everything back together. And I don't know how we're going to get all the information back to the people, because we need to. I don't know if they have emails for everybody that came, or so we could send you the information that there's actually was work done and Okay, so we need that to happen from all the groups, all the presentations, and send a package to everybody that participated, so that you could. What? When? Okay. All right, Gwen's going after this. She wants to come now for the elders, I think she said. Okay, but thank you for your time. There's so much more work that needs to be done, and I want to thank the chiefs for putting up with us and us putting up with you. But thank you for your time, and we have one more presentation, I think. Thank you.